I almost didn't stop. I should have listened to that feeling. Because by the time I realized what was out there with me, it wasn't standing near the trees anymore. It was close enough that I could hear it breathing. And I still can't explain how it crossed that distance without me seeing it. I drive a lot for work, not glamorous. Just long stretches of empty highway, rural routes, the kind of roads that don't show up on most maps. I'd made that particular drive maybe 30 times before. Back from my uncle's property, 2.5 hours outside the city. Route 9 most of the way, then a county road for the last 40 minutes. I knew it well. That's the part that still gets to me. It was early October. Cold front had moved in that afternoon. The kind of cold that comes too fast that makes the air feel thinner than it should. I lost GPS signal around mile marker 11. That happens sometimes out there. I wasn't worried. What I was worried about was the fuel gauge. I'd been watching it drop for longer than I'd admitted to myself. There was a station about a mile back, one of those old ones. I'd passed it on the way out, so I turned around. The station sat alone, 2 pumps under a metal canopy, one light flickering on the left side. A small attached building, looked like it sold cigarettes and not much else. No other businesses, no houses visible, nothing in any direction except flat county road and whatever was past it in the dark. There was one car parked along the side of the building, engine off, no one in it. I pulled up to the pump, got out, and the first thing I noticed was how quiet it was. Not peaceful quiet, the other kind. The kind where your body knows something before your brain catches up. I started the pump and looked out of habit toward the tree line. It sat maybe 40 feet from the edge of the lot. Dense, old growth. The trees were close together, branches starting low, the kind of woods you couldn't walk into without pushing your way through. Dark in a way that felt total. I don't know why I kept looking at it, I just did. Then I heard it. A branch. One branch snapping clean. Not the gradual creak of wind. Not the soft crack of something small. The kind of snap that takes weight. I told myself it was a deer. I said it out loud. It's just a deer. Then I kept looking. And that's when something didn't add up. Because a deer reacts to sound. A deer bolts. A deer at minimum shifts. You hear the brush move, the rustle of something putting distance between itself and you. Nothing moved. And then I realized I'd been standing next to a running engine, under a canopy with a flickering light. And whatever was at that tree line hadn't reacted to any of it. Not the car pulling in, not the pump clicking on, not me. Most people, you pull into a gas station at night, they glance up, even if they don't mean to. It's instinct. This was the opposite of instinct. He already knew I was there. The pump clicked off. I replaced the nozzle, got back in the car, locked the door, started the engine. And before I pulled out, I looked one more time. He was standing at the edge of the tree line, just standing there, facing me. He wasn't surprised to see me. That was the part I couldn't shake. I don't know when he moved from wherever he'd been in the trees. I don't know how long he'd been standing there. Dark clothing. Impossible to make out details at that distance. Arms at his sides. Not moving. Just watching. I pulled out of the lot and got back on the road. I told myself hunter. I told myself farmer. I told myself any reasonable explanation that didn't require me to feel what I was already feeling. It worked for about 2 miles. That's when my headlights caught it. On the right shoulder. A pile of clothing. Folded. Not dumped. Folded. Jeans on the bottom. A dark jacket on top. Sleeves crossed over each other. Boots placed beside the pile, side by side. Toes pointing toward the road. I didn't stop. I slowed. I looked. And I kept going. My brain was already building the story. Someone broke down. Someone changed clothes. There's a normal reason for this. But the boots. You don't fold your boots and set them toes forward on a gravel shoulder unless you're thinking about it. Unless it means something. I drove another 1.5 miles. Then I saw him. on the opposite shoulder, walking, or not walking exactly, moving, fast, the way someone moves when they have somewhere specific to be. Dark clothing. He wasn't looking at the road. He was looking at my car. We passed each other in about 3 seconds. I didn't get a clear look at his face. I didn't want one. I accelerated and I didn't look back. Not in the mirror. Not once. I don't know if it was the same man. I don't know how it could have been. The math doesn't work. The timing doesn't work. But here's the thing I keep coming back to. If you leave a pile of clothes on the side of a rural road at night, neatly, deliberately, boots side by side, you're not planning to come back for them, and whatever you're doing next, you don't want anything slowing you down. What happened next made that night feel like nothing, because at least when it happened to me, I was moving. Dana wasn't. Dana was asleep. My friend grew up in a rural part of the state. I'll call her Dana. She asked me not to use her real name. I'll explain why in a moment. Her parents' property sat at the end of a long gravel driveway, nearest neighbor half a mile east. Beyond that, farmland in every direction, flat and open, the kind of landscape where you can see anything coming from a long way off. Or so you'd think. Her parents were out of the country for 2 weeks. Dana agreed to house sit. She'd grown up in that house. She knew every sound it made. She knew which floorboard creaked, which window let in wind, which door needed lifting before the latch would catch. She wasn't nervous. That's important. Dana is not someone who scares easily. She grew up around animals, around darkness, around all the sounds rural properties make at night. None of that bothered her. The first night passed without anything. Second night. Third. On the fourth night, she woke up at 2 a.m. No alarm. No sound she could name. Just awake. Eyes open. Staring at the ceiling. And then she realized the crickets had stopped. If you've spent time in the country, you know what that means. Crickets don't just stop. They stop because something is there. Something that doesn't belong. She lay completely still and listened. 60 seconds, maybe 90. Then they started again. Slowly. The way they do when whatever disturbed them has moved on. She told herself it was an animal. Fox, coyote. Something that passed through and kept going. She went back to sleep. 2 nights later, she was at the kitchen sink, washing dishes, window facing the back field. It was around 10 p.m. That's when she saw the light. Moving, out past the fence line, low to the ground, slow. She thought, flashlight. But it didn't move like a flashlight. A flashlight swings, even slightly. It moves with the person carrying it. The natural sway of a walking arm. This didn't sway. It moved in a straight, steady line from left to right across the far edge of the field. Then it stopped. Just stopped. Stayed in one place for a moment. Then went out. She stood at that sink for a long time after, watching the dark where the light had been. Nothing else moved. She told herself it was the neighbors, checking on cattle. Someone who had every right to be there. She finished the dishes, dried her hands, went to bed. It wasn't until the next morning that she noticed the back door. She didn't just think she'd locked it. She remembered locking it. She could picture herself doing it. Turning the key, testing the handle, checking it twice the way she always did. Which meant she didn't forget. Which meant something else. She locked it again, didn't say anything to her parents, told herself she was overthinking it. 4 days passed. Quiet. Normal. She started to relax. That was a mistake. On the 11th night, she woke up at 2 a.m., same as before. No alarm, no clear reason, just awake. And this time the crickets weren't the thing. This time she heard footsteps. On the porch, slow, deliberate, moving along the side of the house. She said it didn't sound like someone who was lost. It didn't sound like someone who was confused. It sounded like someone who knew exactly where they were. She didn't move, didn't breathe. She counted the footsteps the way you count things when your brain is trying to stay in control. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, then nothing. Not walking away, just stopping. Right outside her bedroom wall. She lay there for 20 minutes. She told me later it felt longer than anything she'd ever experienced. When she finally moved, she checked every door, every window, every lock. Nothing was open, nothing was broken, nothing was disturbed, except the back door. Unlocked. Again. Not forced. Not broken. Just unlocked. Like someone wanted her to notice. She called her parents at 6 a.m. They told her to call the police. The police came out, walked the property, found nothing. Dana left that afternoon. She has not been back to that house alone since. And here's the part I can't get out of my head. Whatever was testing those doors, it stopped the moment she stopped being predictable. The first unlocked door, she stayed. The footsteps, she stayed. The moment she left, it stopped. Which means it was watching her response, measuring it, learning what she would do. And I don't know what the next step was. I don't know what it was waiting for her to do. But I think she left before she found out. What would you have done? Honestly, if you'd been alone in that house, would you have stayed? If you're watching this late at night, alone, make sure you're subscribed, because the last story didn't happen to someone I know. It happened to me, and I've never fully understood it, not even now. I want to be careful about how I tell this, because there's a version of this story that sounds like paranoia, and I've spent 8 months trying to convince myself that's all it was. I haven't been able to. There's a stretch of county road about 30 miles from where I live. 2 lanes, farmland on both sides. No lights after the grain elevator about 12 miles in. I've driven it more times than I can count. Night drives, long drives. Drives where the only other thing on the road is the occasional truck and your own headlights. I knew that road. Late August. About 8 months ago. I was coming home from a friend's place around midnight. Clear night. No weather. No reason for anything to be wrong. I made it about 12 miles down when I saw the truck, parked sideways, across both lanes. Hazard lights going. I slowed to a stop about 50 yards back, left my headlights on it. Newer model pickup. No visible damage, no skid marks, no sign of an accident. It didn't look like a breakdown. It looked like a blockade. I sat there. 30 seconds. A minute. Nothing moved. I rolled down my window. Listened. The hazard lights clicked. Crickets. Wind moving through the corn on the right side. That was it. I honked. Once. Nothing. No response from inside the truck. No movement. No lights coming on. I was reaching for my phone, already knowing there'd be no signal, when the driver's door opened. A man got out, slowly. He stood beside the truck and looked in my direction, and he didn't move. I don't know how to describe the way he stood. It wasn't tense, it wasn't aggressive, it was patient, like he had all night, like he'd been through this before. He didn't wave, didn't call out, didn't gesture, just stood there with his hands at his sides, looking at my car like he'd been expecting it, like I'd arrived exactly when I was supposed to. Not early, not late, right on time. I put the car in reverse, slow, steady, eyes on him the whole time. He still didn't move. I got maybe 30 yards back when my rear bumper hit something and the car stopped. I looked in the mirror. Another truck. No headlights, just sitting there, silent. I had not heard it pull up. I had not seen headlights in the mirror. It had simply appeared in the space behind me while I was looking forward. The door opened. A second man stepped out. I yanked the wheel left, hard, dropped off the shoulder into the field, and I floored it. I drove through that cornfield for what felt like forever. Stalks hitting the windshield, ground uneven under the tires. No idea what was ahead of me. I didn't care. I found a gravel access track about a quarter mile in, followed it north, found a road, I drove until I hit the highway. I didn't stop, I didn't look back. I never reported it. I tried to think about what I'd say. 2 trucks on a county road, 1 blocking traffic, 1 parked behind me. Men who didn't speak, didn't threaten. Nothing technically happened. But here's what I've come back to every single day since. The truck behind me, the one with no headlights, had been sitting in that road before I ever arrived. I know this because I didn't see it approach. I didn't hear an engine, I didn't see any light. It was already there, which means they weren't reacting to me. They were waiting for me, or for whoever came down that road. And the man in front, he wasn't trying to flag someone down. He was standing in a position where he could see in both directions, where nothing could approach without him knowing. A position you take when you're making sure no one interrupts you. And I've thought about what would have happened if I hadn't put it in reverse fast enough, if I'd pulled forward instead, if I'd gotten out to help. I've thought about that field I drove through, about whether there were others, about what that stretch of road looks like at midnight to anyone driving through it. Isolated, no signal, no witnesses, and I've never been able to answer the one question that matters. What were they waiting for? Because whatever it was, they were ready for it. The truck was already in position. The man was already watching the road. Everything was already set. I think I just got there too early. And whatever was supposed to happen on that road that night still happened for someone.